For the first time, Kevin O'Connell is running the Vikings offense without Kirk Cousins. So what do those differences actually look like? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers more than I could ever tell you. So thank you so much for tuning in and sticking with me every single day. You can find this show Monday through Friday, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. So if you're new, hello, welcome, love you. Go search it out, Locked On Vikings, wherever you listen to your favorite shows every Monday through Friday morning. You can also find the show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app, and you can find it on SiriusXM, where you can also find live broadcasts of Minnesota Vikings games and any sporting event. Just search out that team. Search out Vikings on the SXM app, and you can find live hometown Paul Allen broadcasts of all Vikings games, including this Sunday's against the Houston Texans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today on the show, I want to have a quarterback discussion about Sam Darnold. Now that we've seen a couple games from him, a couple games that we're largely very happy with, outside of, we'll say, a couple of bozo moments. We'll get to it. But we're pretty happy with Sam Darnold, right? Vikings are 2-0, and the offense does feel different, doesn't it, than it did the last 2 years with Kirk Cousins. There are pros and cons, of course, to every quarterback, and so I kind of wanted to talk through where we're at now. What are we dealing with here? Because I think we can now get a good sense for the type of guy that we're going to be watching under center all year long. After that, I want to get to the defensive side of the ball. In particular, the run defense. Jordan Mason gashing the Vikings all day long until they made an adjustment that really slowed it down. And I want to talk really nitty gritty about like run fits, too high in particular, and as well as the linebackers, Ivan Pace and Blake Cashman, the latter especially, having absolutely insane games. I want to give them their flowers too. I think I owe them that. But first, the quarterback stuff. Okay, so we've had 2 years of Kevin O'Connell, but they've been Kirk Cousins years. Right? Or at least they were planned to be Kirk Cousins years. The back half of last year was still a Kirk Cousins offense, just piloted by someone else when Cousins went down. And now it's a Sam Darnold world. The play calls themselves aren't all that different. Maybe the frequency is different, or what Sam Darnold likes and doesn't like and feels comfortable with, and so that you should probably call those, right? So you might get to different variations on things. Plus, you have totally different pass catchers right now. No Addison last week. They don't have TJ Hawkinson. That's going to change a lot about the offense. Last year, right, they spent a whole bunch of it without Jefferson. That changed the offense. So there's a lot of differences. But really the key word here in terms of what Sam Darnold brings to the Vikings that they haven't had before is opportunism. I want you to think about that word, opportunistic. Darnold has been an opportunistic quarterback. There are a bunch of plays that really exemplify this, and I think that opportunism has led the Vikings to wins. And if I really wanted to be spicier about this, I would even go forward and say the take, these are wins that Kirk Cousins doesn't get because Kirk Cousins was not an opportunistic quarterback. That's not really the game he ever had. And he would defend that to you if you challenged him on it. He would say, no, I'm not trying to be opportunistic. I'm not trying to look for opportunities outside the lines. I'm given the play, I execute it. CEO. Like, that's the way he always did things. I'm told, I'm going to look at this route, then that route. I'm going to read the coverage this way. If there's options in the route, we'll think about those on the fly. But there are a lot of moments that Sam Darnold had that really refreshingly, he punished small mistakes that the 49ers made. Really small mistakes. And that's how you have to do it when you're playing a good team. If you want a more in-depth breakdown here, I have an hour-long Patreon video. It got away from me. Hour-long Patreon video on Sam Darnold's 49ers game that just went up. It's uploading as I record this. as well as a Sam Darnold breakdown from the Giants game, which is now free for everybody. You can find all that at patreon.com/LeBronNFL. But let me give you a couple of examples, a preview, if you will. The two plays that are probably your favorite from this game are the 97-yard touchdown and the Jalen Nailor 3rd and 9 sort of dagger that brought the Vikings to field goal range at the end of the game and allowed them to kill the rest of the clock and kick to go up 2 scores. At least those are my two favorite plays. But the Jalen Nailor one, like I said on Monday, is the one that really sticks out to me. And it sticks out even more upon, really studying it. What happens here, if you'll take a moment to visualize with me, is Trent Sherfield's in motion before this play. And Isaac Yiadom, who is, I guess, their nickel corner, is following him in motion. But because it takes him across the formation, he becomes a hook curl dropper in a zone. Or I apologize, he becomes a Tampa 2 runner in Tampa 2 zone. So you've got your 2 high safeties, and then they play a little wider than they do in classic cover 2. And to make up that space in the middle of the field and to kind of cover that seam, the middle hook player drops deeper. That's number 22, Isaac Yiadom. He is also relating to Trent Sherfield's motion. Maybe that means they're checking out of whatever coverage they were in, but what it means is that now the middle dropper is running with Trent Sherfield, and it looks to me like he runs a little further than he wanted to. His landmark, as is typical in Tampa 2, is right over the ball. He wants to align himself right over the ball, dead center of the coverage, and then just start backing up if something goes vertical on him, which it does. The Vikings are running a concept. If I recall, they call it shade. I might be mixing that up, so don't quote me there. But what it is 2 clear outs. One of them's Nailor. One of them's a wheel, I think is Johnny Munt. They're just running deep, right? And you peek at both of those. You alert both of those, but you kind of never throw them in this concept because most defenses are going to have somebody run with that guy and cover it. And then you have an underneath it. So this is a very go-to 3rd and long call for Kevin O'Connell. He loves this thing, and he loves in particular when he has TJ Hawkinson throwing the under to TJ Hawkinson. You're basically just deep in everybody and throw it to somebody underneath and let that guy, or a lot of times it's a running back. You have Aaron Jones run that, split out wide and run that against a linebacker and then run away from him. But they loved doing that to Dalvin Cook on 3rd and long, by the way. But they throw that under, and that's like 9 out of 10 times that's where the ball goes. Sometimes it'll check down. Sometimes they bust a coverage and you try it long, right? Well, this one tries it long. So they go into Tampa 2, and visualize with me, right? You've got a deep safety. One of them is going to take that Johnny Munt clear out. And the Tampa runner is going to take Jalen Nailor, who's essentially running straight up that seam where he's supposed to be Yiadom's guy. But because Yiadom has run past where he wants to be a little bit, he has to open his hips to the middle of the field to get back to his landmark. He has to open his hips so that he can get back to where he's supposed to be because he overran it just like 2 steps. That's all this is he overran it with motion 2 steps, and this is the punish is a back-breaking 30-yard pass. So as the Tampa runner, you typically want to open your hips up to speed. There's actually a great explanation of this in a breakdown of the Vikings-Giants game on Underdog Fantasy with Josh Norris. I think it was Colt McCoy, talking about that Josh Oliver catch in the red zone from the Giants game and how the Tampa runner opens to speed. If you got a wide receiver on one side, a tight end on the other, you want to open your hips toward the wide receiver so that if you have to run with that guy, you have the help you need. The tight end's a little slower. You can afford to lose a little bit of ground. So you usually want to open to speed. Well, the Vikings are in a trips formation, and because of the way that Yiadom has overrun this, he's opening away from trips. So you want to open your hips toward speed, and he is opening his hips away from a guy whose nickname is literally Speedy. This is not ideal. Sam Darnold identifies this on the drop back. If you look at his footwork, it is drop throw. There is not even a hitch in it. Drop, and it's just gone. So he is seeing that tiny little mistake that the runner's opened his hips the wrong way, and then knows that if he throws on the back shoulder of Jalen Nailor, that Yiadom won't be able to make a play on that side of his body because he's opened his hips away from it. He talked about this on the podium, that he wanted to lay that out. And the other thing is, this is the other thing that Darnold talked about on the podium after the game, was usually if you are going to throw that, like if they run that on air in a walkthrough, you'll rainbow that up. You'll try to drop that in the bucket. And so he is trusting Jalen Naylor to be aware that that ball is coming to his back shoulder, that he has to adjust for it, instead of just kind of like hands out, looking over where's the ball going as it lands next to him. So he's trusting Jalen Naylor a little bit with where he places that ball. He places that ball perfectly accurately and trusts a wide receiver to make the adjustment that he has to make so he can throw that out of the coverage. But all that relates back to the guy made like 2 more steps than he should have against motion. Darnold recognized that, saw it, and punished it by being opportunistic. I don't think Kirk Cousins makes that play. I think Kirk Cousins throws the under, which Fred Warner probably would have tackled, and we punt. And he would have probably been perfectly happy to say, yeah, punting after a completion, that's fine. And we all would have argued about it with screenshots. But like that's not what we get. I want to go over a couple of other ones here, and then we'll get to the defensive stuff later. Because I do have a couple other Sam Darnold plays that I want to break down in detail for you. So that'll be coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by DoorDash, which, boy, does DoorDash save my life, especially during these incredibly busy times in season. There's so much extra work that I'm doing, and I do not have time to get up and cook a whole dinner for myself. I just got to order something, and DoorDash can help me out. Or if you're maybe watching a Vikings game, you don't want to miss a play. You don't want to miss a moment, right? You don't have a half hour to run out and grab takeout. Use DoorDash. DoorDash can help you through all of those very clutch moments, or maybe you are cooking dinner and, oh my God, I missed an ingredient. DoorDash can get something from your local grocery store as well. So if you haven't signed up for DoorDash yet, go download the app and use promo code LOCKEDFALL24, LOCKEDFALL24, for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. It's a limited time offer and terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. You must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Here's a FanDuel line for you. The Vikings are right now minus 122 to make the playoffs in the 2024 to 2025 season. That means that the FanDuel betting market believes the Vikings to have a greater than 50% chance to make the playoffs after this win against the 49ers. So you are running out of time to seize this unless you think the winning streak is going to fall off and they'll miss the playoffs, which you can also click no at plus 100. Whatever it is, throw down $5 on that. And you can get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Through September 22nd, this offer is available, so you're running out of time here, but bet $5 on anything. And then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game for a 3-week trial. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and hey, you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you would like to hear me go off about the sorry state of the Chicago Bears, go listen to Locked On NFL this morning. It is a bit of a heater, and I went off on Bears brass. I think they've done Caleb Williams quite a disservice the way that they've handled that, but I'll save that for Locked On NFL. For now, I still want to talk about Sam Darnold. There's 2 other plays I want to talk about with this like idea of opportunism. And one of them happens in the red zone. It's early in the game. It's a screen. It is a quick spear screen. So Aaron Jones is just motioning out into like swing pass territory, and you throw it to that, and it's a screen that way. Nick Bosa reads this thing like a book. He ginks it. All right, he's in the backfield ready to intercept this thing. Sam Darnold pump fakes him, gets him to put his hands up, and then throws it around him. It's a fantastic way to rescue a play that otherwise was destroyed. It is a way more aggressive way to play it. And again, I compared it to what Cousins would have done in that situation. And I don't think there would be anything particularly wrong with this, but I think he probably turfs that. He sees a guy in the way. He says, if I throw this, it's the worst interception of my life. You're throwing the Daniel Jones interception from last week. So he probably just dirts it. Just throws it at the guy's ankles and says, let's live to fight another down. I think it was 2nd down. So let's just live to fight another down. We'll have 3rd and long. There is such a stark difference between taking that, which is perfectly fine, but also being able to squeeze a little bit more blood out of the stone by pump faking and making that play. This does not come at no cost, but this is the advantage. You want to understand why it feels like the Vikings offense was a little more clutch? It's because they were taking advantage of more of their opportunities. That is an opportunity. That play is an opportunity, and opportunities are finite in a game. Now that's one that didn't go to waste. They set up like a 3rd and short out of it instead of a 3rd and long. Like that's just strictly better. The problem is it's that same gene, that same, I can get this sort of brain, like neural network that causes him to pump fake that screen is the same thing that causes him to see an illegal shift with a guy in his way and flags flying and go, well, how about I just hook this thing over and I can still get this toss play to Aaron Jones? And you get this fumble nightmare disaster that happened early in the game from early in the first quarter, and you end up with a 2nd and 23 and they would punt. And they're lucky that they fell on that. That could have been even worse. You kind of can't get one without the other. And I think if you were to ask somebody, cost all being the same and everything like that, would they rather have the guy that dirts the screen and plays it safe or the guy that risks that stuff? You'd probably get the guy that dirts the screen. But to beat a team like the 49ers, which is the kind of thing you got to do once you get into the playoffs, you kind of have to play at high risk. It's that old adage, it's an old analytics adage that you don't get any points for losing by less, right? So you kind of have to be that guy sometimes. And the best quarterbacks, the Mahomeses and Josh Allens, well, maybe not Josh Allen, but Mahomes for sure, know exactly when to dirt the screen, or if they can pump the screen or sidearm it or do something crazy, they will, but they just don't have the bozo stuff. Like, what a concept, right? But not for Sam Darnold. You're just going to get this. And it's just a deal that you're going to have to make. And I think the Vikings have happily made it. Maybe they didn't think they were buying quite as many games of it as they were, but they have it now, right? $10 million and you can do this for us. One last play to talk about is the 97-yarder. When Sam Darnold sees it, and this is another one he answered about on the podium, which is great because now we get to know what's going on in his brain. He sees the coverage that the 49ers are in for this game. They are in a middle of field closed coverage, which means they have one high safety, which for the concept that the Vikings called, I'm going to call it a Mills concept, where you've got a post and a basic trying to get a high-low on that high safety. And what you want to do is you want to force his hand. He has to cover the post to Justin Jefferson, or it'll be a 97-yard touchdown, leaving Jalen Nailor one-on-one on the basic or the deep over. And then you trust him to win that matchup because he's probably going to have good leverage anyways, which he did. He was totally wide open there. 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, that's actually going to end up going to the check down, that play. It's 2 deep routes. Every defense has its way of dealing with that. You've got a leaking running back checking down wide open in the flat. You're going to dump it off to him and hope he can run for a first down and get you a big chunk, get you out of the shadow of your own goalpost. So most of the time you're going to that. The other times they screw it up and you get to hit the over, you never hit the post on that. No defense ever lets you hit that post, especially when it's 18. They're never going to let you. What happens is, because it's such a run-first situation, you're backed up on your own goal line, you're really expecting a run, that high safety, he's number 27 on the 49ers, Jair Brown, number 27 on the 49ers, he's their high safety. He slow plays it. He's being very, very unflinching about the way, I'm trying to find a nice word, unflinching about the way that he approaches that particular route concept. And he knows that he probably needs to eventually fill in the run if a run gets loose. And so he's watching that. He takes a couple of little shuffle steps back, but he doesn't backpedal aggressively like you see most of the time with a middle third player. Sam Darnold sees this. The guy's not even messing up. He's just making an aggressive decision. Darnold sees that aggressive decision and he goes, I have it. I don't know if Kirk Cousins ever tries that one. Honestly, I don't know if he has the arm strength to. Sam Darnold has a bigger arm than Kirk Cousins for whatever that's worth, which is not very much. It's more of a draft thing. 53 yards in the air is pretty hard to hit, but I do think Cousins could hit it if he tried. But that guy's going to be horizontal bracketed. You got to lay it up over those 2 guys. If the ball gets away from you at all, you're risking an interception, and you're going to have a wide open over for a chunk play. Cousins is taking Nailor on that every single time. And there wouldn't be a lot wrong with that. But it wouldn't be a 97-yard touchdown. It wouldn't be an opportunistic thing to do. So opportunism is the main point that I wanted to make about Sam Darnold here. He is an opportunistic quarterback. Sometimes being opportunistic leads you to go, hey, I see that Fred Warner over there. I think I can sneak this one by him. And you throw an interception. Or you go, yeah, I know there's like this there's this guy in my way, but I think I can still get the toss there. Which is like the stupidest thing about that is like, dude, there's two players in motion at the snap. Even if you get the toss to him, this play is not going to count, man. Just like eat it. Like Sam Darnold just falls on that. He sees it. He bumps into a guy. He just falls down and says, whatever, they're going to take the 5-yard penalty and let's go to 1st and 15. Darnold turns it into a disaster. But you have to get stuff like that 97-yard strike or the ball to Naylor or even the screen that just sets up a better 3rd and 2. That kind of stuff doesn't come with the same brain cells that toss the ball out and do something stupid or throw a really dumb not a really dumb interception, an aggressive, we'll say, interception to Fred Warner. And ultimately, it is proven to be worth it. That the bad stuff that Darnold does has been heavily outweighed by the good stuff. At least so far. That's pretty cool. And that's not a comprehensive analysis of both of these quarterbacks. I don't want people to say that I'm like sitting here saying Darnold is better than Kirk Cousins ever was. That's not the conversation I'm trying to have here. I'm pointing out the differences, and these differences in these first 2 games so far have worked out for the better for the Minnesota Vikings. Hey, if Sam Darnold turns it over 5 times against the Texans, these differences will still be the thing responsible for it, and we just got the bad end of it that time. But those are the differences. He is opportunistic, and he wants to try to generate opportunities, even if they aren't really necessarily within the structure of the play. That's going to lead to a totally different world. Sometimes you find where you're going when you go sailing in open waters. Sometimes you get eaten by a kraken. That's where we're at with Sam Darnold. Speaking of krakens, Brian Flores' defense. I have a lot to say about that and not a lot of time, so that'll be next. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets. Gametime has been awesome for me. I've been trying to find tickets to the Vikings games that I'm going to go to. I live in LA. I'm going to find a way to the Rams game. And we've got like a group, I got maybe a group of friends going with me, and I can find tickets for like 200 people or $200 a pop for like a group of 6. You're not going to find that deal anywhere else. Trust me, I have tried. It has been an awesome way for me to get tickets. But even if we were just spontaneously trying to go last minute to something, or maybe even a concert or comedy show in our area, you can find that at Gametime as well. You can save up to 60% looking at last minute tickets on Gametime. And hey, Gametime picks will actually curate. If you're just like, I don't know what to do this Saturday, Gametime will curate and make it easier to save for more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so on. And if you find the same section and row somewhere else for less to that same event, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Moving to the defensive part of this Locked On Vikings episode, you may have noticed that Jordan Mason had a pretty good game against the Vikings. Why did this happen, you may ask? Well, on watching it closer, here's the rub. The Vikings played scared of the pass game. I think that's fair. You got Kittle, you got Debo, you got Ayuk. Kyle Juszczyk is running corner routes on you. It's the 49ers. They can sling the ball. So the Vikings played a lot of too high coverages. Now they'd rotate these too high coverages. They'd disguise it. Flores did all kinds of the insane stuff he always does. But at the end of the day, they took a guy out of the box and put him deep, sacrificing in the run to help with the pass. So when you're too high, why is that so much harder? I mean, it's just a numbers game, right? There's one less guy. But when you're too high, sort of by necessity, the way that it works out, you must have a gap that the safety is responsible for. Just because you took him out of the box doesn't mean that that gap stops existing. Somebody still has to be available in that alignment, and it's either going to be like a corner coming in from the side or something like that, or the safety just has to come in off the roof and fill anyways. So you'll have Harrison Smith making tackles after runs for 9, which happened a lot here. And the name of the game becomes, for the offense, when they see too high and they're running against it, find the safety's gap. One of these safeties has a gap. Find the safety's gap. There's a whole bunch of different philosophies for how to deal with this problem defensively. If you have a Vince Wilfork absolute dog, you can have him just be responsible for 2 gaps and everybody else gets 1 and then you're just happy. You can gap at half, Jimmy Pony stuff. If you know what that means, you know what I'm talking about. That's the Saban way to do it, where guys kind of have a primary gap, but they can flash into another one if they have to. The Vikings do some of that. Or if you have Cam Chancellor, he can just get down into the box anyways, and he can line up on the roof, but he can also trigger down. This is what the Vikings were trying to do with Lewis Seen. Didn't work out. The 49ers, to put it really simply, did a really good job of finding the safety's gap. And then it's just a race, the running back to get as many yards as he possibly can before the safety finds him. And he's getting 6, 7, 8 yards a pop before the safety, who's lined up 20 yards off, is getting to him. That's essentially what happened. But which gap you assign to the safety is part of this cat and mouse game. Like, which gap should it be? Should you assign the safety an outside gap so that everything in the middle gets filled up really well? That safety or that running back bounces out, which is going to take longer. That gives the safety more time to fill. That's called spill and kill. You grind up in the middle, you spill that run to the outside, and east-west just takes longer. Your safety now has time to go make the tackle, and if they're good, you're going to minimize that gain. Problem is, some of these guys are absolute dogs, and if it's, say, Christian McCaffrey were healthy, you don't want that dude in space. If he gets the edge, you're kind of cooked. Dalvin Cook lived on spill and kill defenses for his prime in Minnesota. He ate spill and kill defenses. Or you box it. Kind of the opposite, where you prioritize the outside and you leave the safety in one of the A gaps, but you usually do that when you have, say, if you were going to ask Harrison Phillips to 2 gap, or if we're going to do gap and a half, stuff like that. So the Vikings, they didn't fully box it to start. They actually, because of like the way that zone action plays out, everybody's taking a big bucket step, right? Everybody's taking a big lateral step on the 49ers offensive line when they run the ball. And what we practiced here is stepping along with it to kind of maintain the integrity of those gaps. I'm in this gap. If that gap moves, I move with it. The 49ers saw this work like a charm against the Giants, and they decided, okay, if they're going to pursue it that hard, we're just going to be really good at our cutback lanes, right? And that's how Jordan Mason got them really well. Really good at cutback lanes, and in particular, the gap that the Vikings decided to leave open here was the backside A gap. The zone action would flow away, and they did a pretty good job of denying where those runs wanted to go. The edges they wanted to get, the B gaps they wanted to get, but the backside A gap was often the safety's responsibility. And you kind of hoped that linebackers would be, would be able to help there, that Harrison Phillips would maybe gap and a half and he would get over there. But because of how hard all those guys were flowing, it made the cutback even more vulnerable. And really only the safety could get it. So you get 9 yards and the safety would make a tackle, and then you go, well, crap, right? So at a certain point in the game, they made an adjustment that it wasn't going to be the backside A gap anymore, or sometimes the backside B gap. That they were going to play the front side of those gaps, and if you wanted to cut back, it kind of had to be the full outside. And instead of a safety coming down, it was going to be a corner coming over. And he was going to be the one squeezing it out, playing the backside force, basically. And you had, Byron Murphy and Shaq Griffin and Stephon Gilmore doing that job in the run. They're all playing pass first, so sometimes that still got them. And even in the second half, after they made this adjustment, Jordan Mason still had some good runs. But that more or less stemmed the bleeding, where if Jordan Mason tried to cut back into the A gap, well, now there's a lineman there. There's somebody there that was assigned to that. And 2 of the guys that were responsible for sort of facilitating this change were Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace, who both had ungodly, holy crap, insane games. Oh my God, these guys were flying. You probably noticed Cashman on the broadcast, but me personally, coming off the live watch of the game, I was like, I kind of didn't think Ivan Pace had a good game. I was so wrong. He was awesome. And that'll happen, by the way. If you're new to Locked On Vikings, I'm going to have, my idea of what happened in the game coming off the live watch, but I do not hold to that stuff very firmly at all once I look at the tape. Very often this will happen. I'll go, I kind of noticed Ivan Pace like in the vicinity for a bunch of successful plays, and then realizing on watch that those were totally on somebody else and he just happened to be there, making good plays just to get involved. Both of these guys deserve their flowers. They had great games. They were both doing a great job of adjusting to the running back as he would cut back and going, oh, now my gap is this and your gap is that. They did a great job of adjusting, but also they did a great job of just shooting those gaps, getting in the backfield and making crazy plays. Both of them are evaders. I talked about this yesterday on Twitter Tuesday. They're both really great at ducking under a guard, tons of highlights there. And Blake Cashman in particular had some very rangy plays in coverage, a couple of very key pass breakups, including the one that led to a tip drill interception by Josh Metellus. I wish I could talk more about these guys forever. Maybe I'll do a Patreon if I have time, but probably not. I think I'm only doing the 2 this week. And tomorrow we got to go into Texans mode. We're talking to Locked On Texans for Crossover Thursday. And then we're going to do our bold predictions, the over under and all that stuff on Friday. I will see you all for that. And as always, Skol.